Hello all, it's Ruthie with my podcast, The Fiddler's Scroll, where I talk about the things that are worrying me because I'm beginning to realise I'm not a particularly original person, and if something's worrying me, it's probably worrying someone else too. So I thought I would talk about it because, sometimes feeling like someone else has the same problem can be really helpful. So I hope this is helpful. Today, the thing that's worrying me the most is God's timing. And I always worry about God's timing this time of year because my birthday is coming up. And I don't like having birthdays anymore. I used to love having birthdays, but I don't like having them anymore because it seems that every year passes and I don't seem to have moved on in my life. And it's really great pity that I don't look forward to my birthday because I was born in New Zealand and I live in Australia, which means it's spring. And when my birthday starts coming, the flowers pop out. And I always loved that when I was a child. In fact, you guys, this is so ridiculous. But when I moved to America and I had my first birthday in the Northern Hemisphere, I was really shocked because it was an autumn birthday and there were no flowers. And I suppose up to that point, I'd sort of thought the flowers popped out because I was having a birthday, which is unbelievably self-centered. So it's really pretty good I got cured of that. But nevertheless, yes, when my birthday starts coming up these days, I think, oh no, another birthday and I have accomplished nothing. I'm still not married and I'm just getting older and older and older. And, you know, the reality is that I actually think I'm rather foolish about this because one day I want to be a novelist, and I think that the most important thing a novelist can do is observe people and life. That's what I suspect anyway. So I try and observe people as carefully as I can. Oh, that sounds a bit creepy. I don't mean like that. Like I try and notice people across all different kinds of ages. And what I've noticed is that worrying about the passing of time and not accomplishing certain goals, I don't think it's specific to any stage of life. I think that's part of the human condition, and depending on what stage of life we're at, we fret about not managing to get to the next stage because, well, I don't actually have a because. I have observed that it frightens everyone. And I think one of the reasons it frightens us is because God's on eternal time and we're on finite time. God's eternal, he's living forever, and although we're going to go to God one day, if we love him and we're complying with his commandments and seeking his will for our lives, we're going to die. And I think that knowledge of death is what compels us to fret about missing milestones. And it doesn't matter what the milestone is. I've noticed people like myself who are getting older and they're not married, they fret about, oh, no, maybe no one will ever want to marry me. And maybe even if someone does want to marry me, I'll be too old to have children. But then I noticed that, well, when I was a teenager, I was worried about my acne going away. I thought my acne would never go away. I had the most terrible skin, you guys. I was so plain as a teenager. Thank God I didn't recognise how awful looking I was. Sometimes I look at pictures of myself as a teenager and I just shudder. But thankfully, I wasn't aware of how completely plain I was back then, probably because Mum didn't have any sort of fashion magazines in the house. And I'm very grateful to her. Anyway, I don't know how we got onto my teenage acne. Yes, I do. That was all I thought about, that it would never go away. But it did go away eventually. And now, of course, I'm not the least bit grateful for the fact I have clear skin. I just stare in my mirror and see if I can find emerging wrinkles because I'm getting so old. So, well, you see how it is. I'm learning nothing, except I'm beginning to think maybe this has got less to do with the stage of life I'm at and more to do with the fact that I'm a finite human that's going to die, and I don't actually like that. And I feel that by my age, I should have got more together. And then I noticed people above me, they're worrying about other things. People worrying about whether they'll ever be able to afford a house or not. And then there are people who who worry about their health. They don't know if they'll ever get healing or not. And then there are people who worry about finance. That's a big one. And of course, a lot of people, it's very common with my generation. A lot of people are still at home, and that doesn't feel great. Although it's not all bad, because I get on very well with my parents. But nevertheless, it feels strange. And, it doesn't matter what stage of life we're at. We're always going to have something to worry about. So I thought of something that might help, right? I think what we should do is we should imagine all our problems that are worrying us. And your problems and my problems might be similar, and they might be completely different. But whatever your problems are, I bet they're sitting on your shoulders like a big, heavy rock, because that's what problems do, regardless of what they are. So I think what we need to do is, the problem will still be there at the end of this episode. No one is going to pinch our problems. Isn't that a pity? No one is going to steal our problems. So what we'll do is we'll pretend to take this big burden off our shoulders, and then we'll pretend there's a big box with 2 handles on the side. The 2 handles is very important. You must visualize those 2 handles on either side of the box most clearly for this thought experiment to work. Okay, carry your problems to the box, or roll them if they're really big, or like me, you have noodle arms. Frankly, playing the violin is a bit too physical for my physique, but whatever, we're not discussing that. Roll or push or carry your problems to the box. Open the lid in your mind, go, chuck your problems in the box, plomp, and then shut the lid, go. Okay, the problems are now in the box. Now, you can get them at the end of the episode. No doubt they will remind you to get them. That is how problems work. So now what I'm going to do is I have some verses that I found in the Bible that I think are really comforting for when we're waiting for God to move, and he seems to have forgotten us, because we know he hasn't, but sometimes, my goodness, it feels like he has. So this is what I think we should do, right? Take a deep breath and then let it out. Just focus on your breathing and focus very, very carefully on the verses I'm reading. Let these verses of comfort just fill your mind, because sometimes what we do is we just let the fear of, oh, I'll never sort out my finances, or oh, I'll never manage to move out of home, or oh, no one will ever want to marry me, or oh, I shan't be able to have children because I'll be too old, or oh, I'll never be healed from this terrible illness, or oh, my adult children will never speak to me again. Or, there are so many things in this broken world, you guys. And a lot of people are living in hell. There's a lot of hell that you don't have to die to reach. So if you've got something in your life, and it doesn't matter whether it's really big or it's really small, to you it's very painful, right? So just for maybe 5 minutes, we're going to make a change, and we're not going to focus on the big scary problems. As I say, the big scary problems will still be there for you at the end of this. No one is going to steal them. I wish they would, but they won't. So you can just imagine you've put them in the big box, you've shut the lid, and now we're going to fill our mind with these thoughts. Okay, so here we go. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Lamentations chapter 3, verses 25 to 26. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 6. For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter. I can hardly read my handwriting. Though a person may be weighed down with misery. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 6. Oh, I like this one. Trust in the Lord with your heart and Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Isaiah 40, verse 13. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They will soar on wings of eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. Oh, I can't really pronounce this. I'm going to have so much trouble pronouncing this book of the Bible. It's either Habakkuk or Habakkuk. I don't know. But it's we'll say Habakkuk. Chapter 2, verse 3. And this is a really good one, you guys, for when you really believe God's going to give you something, but it's taking an awful long time. For the revelation awaits the appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it lingers, wait for it. It will certainly come and it will not delay. Psalm 27, verse 14. Wait for the Lord. I have to unpeel the edge of my envelope. I wanted to make special little cards, but it was too much effort. So I just found an old envelope in Dad's office. Psalm 27, verse 14. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and take heart, and wait for the Lord. And then Psalm 31, verse 15. I like this one very much, actually. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of my enemies and from those who pursue me. Oh, here's another one I'm going to struggle pronouncing. Nahum, I think. Nahum chapter 1, verse 7. The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him. In Lamentations, this is my absolute favorite. Lamentations 3, verse 24. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore will I wait for him. Okay, it appears that the Bible has a really good consistency on this point, that waiting for God is really good and we can trust him. So then the question becomes, why is it so hard to trust? Because I do know he's good, but I do find it sometimes very hard to trust him. About timing. I think one of the things that makes it hard is that if you choose to trust the Lord with your life and lean on his guidance and trust in his timing, the majority of people will not be supportive, and they will think you are very weird and very strange, because we live in a world where most people are leaning on their own understanding. And if you decide you're going to lean on the Lord and you're going to trust his timing, there will be many people who do not like it. And although this really isn't what I'm talking about anything at all that you're waiting on a miracle or an answered prayer or anything in your life. I suppose it's easiest to understand anything through the lens of where we're standing. And you know, guys, the amount of people on the internet who are saying that a woman should be married by 25 at the latest, and 26 is too late to get married, and past 35 she ceases to even be physically attractive, is enormous. And some of these voices are hugely respected, and they say other things which seem very reasonable. But this incredible panic to get people all married off, I suppose it's coming from a good place, but it seems to me to ignore the point that sometimes we're not in control of these things. God is in control of these things. And you might as well say that the sun needs to start getting up 3 hours earlier, because that would make us all a great deal more productive. Problem is, who controls the sun? And yeah, it's something I've been thinking about a lot. And then I thought, why is it that I pay attention to these people? And then I realised it's because they're good people. That's the key. If they were useless idiots, I would just think, I am not obligated to listen to the opinion of a useless idiot, and I would just move on. And it's precisely because these people demonstrate competency in other areas of their lives when they start spouting their opinion about when people should be married, and when they should be having children by, that's when I start to get unraveled. But interestingly enough, I was reading in the Bible, really interesting story, you guys. So I was in Numbers 13. And you know that story in the Bible about how Moses sends out spies to look into the land that God has promised to the children of Israel, and then they come back with a very negative report, and they're like, oh no, this is going to be so horrendous. These people are so big and strong. We probably look like grasshoppers to them. Well, I had this thought in my head the other day, so I looked it up, and it says, this is Numbers 13. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, send out for yourself men, so they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I am going to give to the sons of Israel. I think this happened about 3,000 years ago, by the way. I'm not very good on dates, but this happened a long time ago, like 3,000 years ago. So that's quite interesting. So Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran, I bet I'm saying that wrong, at the command of the Lord, all of, here's the kicker. Here's the bit I looked up and I was like, now that's interesting. All of the men who were heads of the sons of Israel. These are the most important men in the community. And that's really interesting because if you flip forward to when they come back from the land, now let me see, it says, oh yeah. When they returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days, they proceeded to come to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the sons of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. And they brought back word with them to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Thus they told him and said, we went into the land where you sent us, and it certainly does flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Nevertheless, the people who live in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Amalek is living in the land of the Negev, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea and by the side of Jordan. And Caleb quietened the people before Moses and said, we should by all means go up and take possession of it, for we shall surely overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we will not be able to go up against the people, for they are too strong for us. So they gave out to the sons of Israel a bad report about the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone in spying it out, it is a land that devours its inhabitants. Oh, that sounds scary. And all the people whom we saw in it were men of great size. We also saw the Nephilim. I'm pretty sure those are giants. The sons of Anak who are part of the Nephilim, and we became as grasshoppers in our own sight. And so were we in their sight. You guys, these are very important, wise, powerful men who have gone off on this mission, and they've got so overwhelmed by the obstacles, they've lost their nerve and they are afraid. And you know what? I am absolutely certain that these men were not losers, because Moses was not an idiot. He wouldn't have gone around looking for complete deadbeats to send to do this job. And in addition to that, I can prove it from the text, because if we go back to chapter 13, right, it says, so Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran at the command of the Lord, all of the men who were heads of the sons of Israel. So these were really important men. These were really important, reasonable voices. And they would have had record of being really good, reasonable voices, or they wouldn't have had the job. I just don't think Moses was the kind of idiot. Actually, he wasn't any kind of idiot. He wouldn't have picked idiots to go and do this big, important job. So he picked very reliable voices. And yet, they were overcome with fear, and they spread fear through the whole nation of Israel. So the people of Israel have a choice at this point. They can listen to the voices that are saying, oh no, it was very horrible, full of giants, it'll be very dreadful. Or they can listen to the people who are saying, no, it's a good land, God promised it to us, we should go up and take it. You will note there are many more voices in this story screaming fear than screaming faith. So what happens? Well, the top of my chapter, at chapter 14, the chapter is called The People Rebel, so that's not sounding too great. Let's see what happens. Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night, and all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. And why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they said to one another, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. Okay, that's an interesting approach, and we will come back to that because I have found another very interesting passage of scripture that, what shall I say, seems to fit really nicely with the times we live in, where people say, oh, you just need to get out there and do things very quickly and don't over spiritualize it and lower your standards, and you know the reason you have nothing is because you just didn't move fast enough. Oh, well, that's really interesting. Let's just see what the Bible says to that. Okay, right. So, the first king of Israel, this is quite a long way beyond that first story I was reading you. They now have the land, but this is Saul. He's now the king of Israel, okay? So, Saul was 40 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 32 years over Israel. Now, Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel, of which 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash, then I'm saying that wrong, and in the hill country of Bethel, while 1,000 were with Jonathan at Gibeah of Benjamin, probably saying that wrong too. But he sent away the rest of the people, each to his tent. And Jonathan smote the garrison of the Philistines that was in Geba, and the Philistines heard of it. Then Saul blew the trumpet throughout the land, saying, let the Hebrews hear. And all Israel heard the news that Saul had smitten the garrison of the Philistines, and also that Israel had become odious to the Philistines. The people were then summoned to Saul at Gilgal. Now, the Philistines assembled to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and people like the sand which is on the seashore in abundance. And they came up and camped in Michmash, east of Bethaven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were hard pressed, then the people hid themselves in caves, in thickets, in cliffs, in cellars, and in pits. Also, some of the Hebrews crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. But as for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. Just think of this for a minute, you guys, because this is really important, right? The pressure on King Saul would have been enormous. And I've heard people talk about this portion of the Bible before, and they're quite nasty about Saul. And I think in order to really get the feel of the piece of the Bible, we should think about the fact that it wouldn't be all that fun to be a king with your army all trembling behind you, an absolute stench in the nostrils of your enemies, and that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. That's what we need to keep in our heads, because he's under a lot of pressure. Okay. Yeah. But as for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. Now, you guys, this is really important to know, that of all the tribes in Israel, everyone got a special job. And Saul is of the tribe of Benjamin, and Samuel, the prophet of this time, is from the tribe of Levi. Now, the Levites, they got the priestly blessing, meaning that they ended up being the ones that served in the temple, when there was a temple. That comes later. But they were the ones that could offer the sacrifices, and they were the only ones that could offer the sacrifices. This was a very special job that God gave the Levites. Samuel was allowed to perform sacrifices. Saul was not. He was special too, but he wasn't special like a Levite. He wasn't allowed to make sacrifices, so just keep that in your head. Now he waited 7 days according to the appointed time set by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattering from him. So Saul said, "Bring me the burnt offering and the peace offering." And he offered the burnt offering. And it came about as soon as he finished offering the burnt offering, that behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him and greet him. You guys, it's absolutely terrifying. I don't know how long it takes to make a burnt offering, but it's obvious to me that Samuel turns up on the day he said he was going to turn up. He just turns up later than Saul was expecting him. So Saul couldn't really hold it together long enough to do this properly. And yeah, it's really understandable considering the pressure he was under, but let's see how Samuel reacts to this, because Samuel was a prophet and Samuel was the one who understood how God would feel about this. But Samuel said, "What have you done?" And Saul said, "Because I saw that the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the appointed days, and that the Philistines were assembling at Michmash. Therefore I said, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not asked the favour of the Lord. So I forced myself," keep that in mind, that's interesting, "forced myself and offered the burnt offering." And Samuel said to Saul, "You have acted foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out for himself a man after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him as a ruler over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you." And we know Saul knew he was doing the wrong thing, because he says, "So I forced myself," when he talks about making the offering. And indeed, if you read further on in this book, he loses the kingdom. And to who does he lose the kingdom? To a chap by the name of David. And David actually had an excellent sense of timing, but I don't have time in this podcast to go into that. So I suppose what we'll do is we'll now go back. We'll go back to Numbers, because it gets really interesting on the subject of timing. Okay, so we are now back in Numbers. We've just got into the chapter headed "The People Rebel." And at this point, they're so scared because they've been listening to these big important men who have told them, "Oh no, it's just a terrible land. Well, I mean, actually the land's quite good, but oh, you should see the problems." Let's see how God, and they've listened to these men, and they're now going to do the sensible thing and appoint a leader to take them back to Egypt. Let's see how this goes down with God, shall we? And the Lord said to Moses, "How long will this people spurn me, and how long will they not believe in me, despite all the signs which I have performed in their midst? And I will smite them with a pestilence and dispose them, and I will make you a nation greater and mightier than they." Moses is pretty clever here. I like this story. But Moses said to the Lord, "Well, then the Egyptians will hear of it, for by thy strength thou did bring up this people from their midst, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that thou, O Lord, art in the midst of this people, for thou, O Lord, art seen eye to eye, while thy cloud stands over them, and thou dost go before them as a pillar of cloud by day, and as a pillar of fire by night. Now, if thou dost slay this people as one man, then the nations who have heard of thy fame will say, because the Lord could not bring this people into the land which he promised them by oath, therefore he slaughtered them in the wilderness. Therefore, but now I pray, let the power of the Lord be great, just as thou hast declared. The Lord is slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, but he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people, according to the greatness of thy loving kindness, just as thou hast forgiven this people from Egypt even until now." So the Lord said, "I have pardoned them according to your word. But indeed, as I live, all the earth will be filled with the glory of the Lord. Surely all the men who have seen my glory and my signs, which I have performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, yet have put me to the test these 10 times, and have not listened to my voice, shall by no means see the land which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who spurn me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land which he entered, and his descendants shall take possession of it. Now, the Amalekites and the Canaanites live in the valleys. Turn tomorrow and set out to the wilderness by way of the Red Sea. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, How long shall I bear with this evil congregation who are grumbling against me? I have heard the complaints of the sons of Israel that they are making against me. Say to them, As I live, says the Lord, just as you have spoken in my hearing, I will surely do to you. Your corpses shall fall in this wilderness, even all your numbered men, according to your complete number, from 20 years old and upwards, who have grumbled against me. Surely you shall not come into the land which I swore to settle you, except for Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, someone whose name I cannot pronounce, and Joshua, the son of Nun. Your children, however, whom you said would become a prey, I will bring them in, and they shall know the land which you have rejected. But as for you, your corpses shall fall in the wilderness, and your sons shall be shepherds for 40 years in the wilderness, and they shall suffer for your unfaithfulness until your corpses lie in the wilderness. According to the number of days which you spied out the land, 40 days. For every day you shall bear your guilt a year, even 40 years, and you shall know my opposition. I, the Lord, have spoken. Surely this I will do to all this evil congregation who are gathered against me. In this wilderness they shall be destroyed, and there they shall die. You guys, when we are walking with God, and we are on God's time, not the world's time, it is really important that we do not listen to the voices of fear that say, oh, that doesn't look like a good idea. You really should think of a more sensible thing to do, because you know there are big problems with the road you're taking. You guys, if you are taking the road that God has called you to take, do not allow anyone, no matter how important or highly placed, to tell you that God is not trustworthy and that the problems you're going to face are bigger than his power to save you and bigger than his commitment to keeping his promises. The men who gave the evil report to the children of Israel were good, respectable, honourable men. They had probably spent most of their life giving wise, sage advice on many, many issues. We live in very, very strange times. I would say bordering on Napoleonic. I think people are going to write screeds and screeds of history books about the time we live in, because it is a very strange time. And when we live in a very strange time, sometimes the old methods, they just don't work like they used to. And when that happens, we need guidance from God. And we cannot plot our course by old maps when we are in territory uncharted. And that is why, regardless of how long God takes to answer prayer, we must trust him. And anyone who says, oh, you left it too long, you'll have nothing now, no matter how right they are about everything else, they are spreading an evil report. And Saul lost the kingdom because he couldn't just wait just that little bit longer. Actually, when I kept reading, it said that Saul said, you didn't come on the day you said you were coming. So I don't know if he arrived an hour later than Saul expected or a day later. What I do know is because Saul didn't have the internal strength to wait, he lost the kingship. And the children of Israel, because they made the huge mistake of listening to these spies who said, oh, look at the problems, they ended up adding 40 years to the wait to get into the promised land, which suggests to me that if you decide you're going to listen to the voices of fear, you're going to add a lot of time to your wait. And honestly, I don't want to do that. So regardless of what you're facing in life, remember, God is our help and God is our strength. And anyone who's telling you otherwise, Anyone who's telling you that because you didn't get things together in a certain time frame, you're just going to be so depressed and empty, pay no attention to them because they're only going to add time to your weight and you don't know. They might even lose your destiny. You remember at the start, I said, imagine all of those problems, take them off your shoulders, put them in the box with the 2 handles on either side of the box, shut the lid. And we'll come back to it. The time has come to come back to the problems in that box. You guys, we live in a broken world. We live in a strange world. We live in a world that is so topsy-turvy. Sometimes we don't know whether we're upside down or right side up, especially when you live in Australia or on the bottom of the world. So what are we going to do with these problems? Well, these problems still exist. It is true that it's harder to have children when you're older. And it is true that there is a housing shortage in a lot of the world. And it is true that if you are feeling very, very sick and you have some mysterious illness, it can be hard to find the right medication. And it is true that broken relationships take a long time to heal. And it is true that there are wars going on. And it is true that there are many, many things to be afraid of. And we all have a certain amount of these fears that we just carry around. But they're in the box, right? Remember, we put them in the box. And realistically, we have to keep carrying that box. Whatever makes us afraid, we have to carry it. But you guys, that box has 2 handles on it. I told you keep those 2 handles in your mind very, very firmly for a reason. I suggest now that you walk over to the box that you put your problems in at the start of this episode. Pick up one handle of the box, but look at that other handle and say, you know what, God? I could really do with some help. I'm finding life scary. I'm finding your time frame difficult. I'm struggling with prayers that don't seem to be getting answered. I don't understand why you're not moving fast enough. But since we seem to be stuck with your timing, since we seem to be stuck with walking at your pace, would you do me a favor? Please pick up the other handle of that box. Help me carry it, because I can't carry it by myself. That, my friends, is the secret to inner peace, regardless of what you're facing. We don't know what's in the future, but we know who's in it, and it's God. And if we call out to him and we say, please help me carry this thing I'm afraid of, you guys, he's going to come running. That's going to be like the biggest present you can offer him because he loves to help. He just needs an invitation. So those are my rambling thoughts on how I'm coping with the fact things do not seem to be proceeding at the speed I would like them to proceed. I hope this has been of some help and comfort to you, but most of all, I hope it encourages you to open the good book for yourself, because just like we can't tune a fiddle without a scroll, we need the Bible to tune the soul. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.